let's get into the topic, I suppose. As we know, weather and climate are crucial parts in our society, and because due to the effects of the Industrial Revolution, um, the weather phenomena has become more and more extreme, let's say, in the past centuries or even decades, especially. Um, there are many, let's say, high intensity storms, global warming, and this because of this, we are even more interested in studying and predicting weather events and identifying and trying to prevent any disasters, let's say. Um, and because of this, clouds are one of the most important factors of weather and atmospheric events in general, uh, the causing uh, precipitations, storms, and a lot of unwanted events. And it would be crucial to identify and correctly classify them. Um, as you might know, there is a standard classification of the clouds, separating them into 10 classes. There are also many other ways of classifying the clouds, and especially in the datasets um, that are all around the research community. There are many other ways to classify them. Here, they are separated into 3 levels, and each one having multiple Latin-based names. For example, maybe the most popular recognized one would be cumulonimbus, which the can cause the most extreme weather events. Here is a example image of some cumulus clouds. About the motivation of the project, clouds have a lot of characteristics that make them unique: color, shape, variations in all their features. And because of this identification process is indeed a challenging aspect, and this would be handled until now by meteorologists manually, the identification, and with the ever so increasing importance of AI in all the domains, it was almost certain that it would also appear in this domain of weather and even here in the domain of cloud classification. So because of this, machine learning proves to be a very promising aspect. Here is another example image of some tropical storm. There are many approaches already in this domain for identifying clouds and classifying them. I have studied a few articles. There are all kinds of approaches from using supervised and self-supervised models, and a lot of data sets that are involved in these studies. Here are some examples like CCSN, GCD, or SameCat, and let's say these 3 types are ground-based. There are also other data sets like MODIS, I believe, which is satellite-based, or even other data sets. And yeah, about each article, they had different results. Some approaches had, let's say, some older considered models, like CloudNet. They had some, let's say, good results on some data sets. We also, as the research team, had a proposal, let's say, for some ground starting as a starting point with two models, xCloud and mCloud, which are considered to be lightweight because they are based on exception model. They were trained on two data sets and they achieved, let's say, decently enough result. Maybe still not as high as in other approaches, but this would also be due to the methodology which was applied by us and as compared to other papers and the way they used data subsets in evaluating the models. I will talk about this a bit more later. There are also other interesting studies on models with some specific reprocessing and image segmentation elements in the pipeline. There are also some other more complex models like a CNN ResNet with many transformations being applied to the image, or applying super resolution, again segmentation on other models. There are also some more interesting approaches, let's say with some Siamese neural networks, which were used in a self-supervised task, using some data which was not labeled, and they achieved, they had their own way of evaluating the data sets and received, achieved some decent results. Yeah, that's, let's say, mostly about the part of the related work. Here's another suggestive example image of the CCSN dataset, which has its own, let's say, challenging aspects due to the fact that there are many obstructions that could appear in the corners of the image, ground elements, buildings, mountains. So they, in many papers, they don't, the people that are trying to approach this data set to train on the models on it, hardly receive great results. It is indeed a challenging data set. For our proposal, we designed a vision transformer model. We were thinking about the transformer architectures, which are very popular especially in the last few years. And transformers are also applied in computer vision tasks through this vision transformer, which was proposed lately. And we were trying to integrate this for the task of class classification to try and see if its core aspects and say powers which relate to self-attention mechanisms, generalization would help. We also, in the same way, tried with some to integrate the diffusion elements in the approach. For now, we are currently working on applying some transformations to the image in the data sets, meaning that some data sets have some challenges like class embellishment and especially CSN, which doesn't have a lot of data. So we are trying to approach a new form of offline augmentation for the generative diffusion creation of images. and this is something we are currently working on. For the diffusion classifier, which could be tried in the approach, it is basically performing some slight distortions through a diffusion process on a given image, and then trying to predict what differences to extract from that image to go back to its original form. So it could be considered like something like a bijection between the original domain of the images and the pure noise space, and then trying to go from one domain into the other. This is a overview of the architecture in the proposed article of the diffusion classifier. For the diffusion transformer, which we already tried experimenting on, it has, as I said, multiple techniques involved, like patch embeddings and positional embeddings for the image patches as compared to NLP tasks where positional embedding are performed on tokens, let's say, and this was like applied, adjusted for the computer vision tests, but for patches. Self-attention, as I said, this is another image for the architecture in the article that first proposed such a specialized transformer. For the case study on real data, which means our experiments, we are currently doing some tests on 3 of the datasets, which I said GCD, CSN, and SwimCat. We already reached some considerable results on the SwimCat extend dataset, which is, let's say, an extension of the original SwimCat dataset. Over 99% as compared to other papers which received like over 98%. We also face some problems with some challenges with CCSN, but still reach values that are higher compared to our original approaches, which were Xcloud and mCloud on the CCSN. Here is a example image from the last experiments which were performed in the past few weeks on the SwingCat. A 5-fold cross-validation process was applied, which would mean that the entire dataset was split into 5 folds, equally sized, and 1 fold was used for test, and the other ones, k-1, would be used for training, and let's say a small fraction would also be considered as for validation. For let's say observing live loss results during training, or even early stopping if the evolution seems to reach a plateau level. This is another image for with some confusion matrices for the same experiment. This was from the last few days, and yeah, it's reached almost perfection, so it's not something a lot to be said here. This would be, let's say, the best results we reached so far on this dataset. As I said, we are currently experimenting on, so fortunately I couldn't bring some more results, even if I wanted to. On CCSN, we reached like over 53% with a simple vision transformer model. The earlier approaches also reached, let's say, almost 53%, the Xcloud and mCloud from our first proposal. And yeah, here is just a comparison of the related work approaches and trying to compare our model up until now with them. They reached some good results as well. Some of them even greater results, but this would also depend on the methodology which is applied. This is just a table where you can see the results of each one of the approaches and ours, which is currently under development. And for the conclusion, yeah, we're planning, we are currently trying to also integrate the offline augmentation, new idea of images generated through a diffusion model, which we hope would also increase a little the results. And as I said, these new novel approaches have some unique elements. The VIT already showed a slight increase as compared to other models on some of the data sets. About the future work, we would also plan to make us to implement a diffusion classifier at some point, so to use the generative elements capabilities, but in a classification style way, as I presented with the diffusion classifier, and maybe even create some kind of hybridization between a transformer and a diffusion model would be something interesting to research on. And there are also other ideas like multimodal data fusion, where we could integrate multiple forms of data and like images or radar data. And yeah, also trying to experiment on generative learning or some other ideas in the future. And yeah, here are just the references. I think that's pretty much what I was planning to say. If you have any other, if you have questions.